Back in 1992, my girlfriend and I were flying into her hometown for Thanksgiving after spending months traveling across the country. We arrived a few days earlier than planned, but instead of telling her family, or mine, who were also flying in, we decided to keep it a surprise. No texts, no calls. This was before cell phones and tracking apps, back when you could actually disappear for a little while. We landed late, around 11 p.m. or midnight, and rather than show up at her family's house in the middle of the night, we booked a stay at a nice extended stay hotel. It was one of the better places we'd stayed in. A kitchenette, a couch, a TV, a king-sized bed. The kind of place that makes you think, yeah, this'll do. I crashed immediately. She took a shower and then lay in bed, unable to sleep. It was around 2 a.m. when she finally started to drift off. Now, for some context, our room had a sliding glass door that led directly into the parking lot. To the left of the bed were those heavy hotel curtains, drawn shut. Straight ahead was the main door, a desk, and a smaller window. At some point, she realized the blinds on that window weren't fully closed, but she was too exhausted to care. The room was pitch black. No way anyone could see inside. Just as she turned over to go to sleep, she saw a flash. A quick burst of white light through the cracked blinds. It looked like a camera flash, but the parking lot was about 50 steps away. She dismissed it as a streetlight or maybe headlights from a passing car. She was too tired to think much of it. She fell asleep. At 5 a.m., I woke up to loud knocking. Not just a tap or a random thump. This was persistent, deliberate. Before I could even process what was happening, she stirred awake too. We were both disoriented, trying to make sense of it. Knock, knock, knock. I figured maybe it was a drunk guy, someone who got turned around after a long night and thought this was his room. It was the holidays after all. But the knocking didn't stop. It paused, then started again. This time on the main door. Something about it felt wrong. It wasn't frantic, like someone in trouble. It wasn't casual, like a drunk friend looking for help. It was determined. Someone wanted in, and they weren't announcing themselves. I hesitated before checking the peephole. Nothing. Then, knocking at the sliding glass door again. That's when the unease really set in. If this was someone who got locked out, wouldn't they be calling a name? Yelling something? Instead, they just knocked. I moved to the sliding glass door and waited. The knocking kept going. My heart was hammering at this point, but I didn't want to scare her. I took a deep breath and peeled back the curtain just enough to see outside. Nothing. But the second I let the curtain fall back into place, it was like they knew exactly when I looked. I couldn't pretend anymore. I was terrified. She was terrified. Nobody knew we were here. No family, no friends, nobody. The only person who even had a clue was the older man who checked us in. And why the hell would he care where we were? At this point, I wasn't just uneasy. I was afraid. If whoever was out there got inside, what was I supposed to do? I'm 5 feet 8 inches and 125 pounds soaking wet. I can throw a punch, sure, but if they were bigger, and chances were they were, I didn't stand much of a chance. I grabbed the hotel phone and called the front desk. The knocking didn't stop as the phone rang. On the second ring, the same man from check-in answered. I tried to sound calm, but my voice came out tense. I explained what was happening, knocking at both doors nonstop. His tone changed immediately, concerned. "I'm sending the security guard over right now," he said. The knocking went on for another minute before stopping abruptly. Not even 2 minutes later, the phone rang again. The front desk. "Security didn't see anybody," he said. "Didn't find any signs of anyone either. I'm really sorry about that." Neither of us slept after that. We stayed up, our eyes on the doors, waiting for the sun to rise. When we finally stepped outside later that morning, there was only one sign that anything had happened. A single footprint. Right outside the sliding glass door, leading away. It made no sense. This wasn't a sketchy area. It was a place she'd grown up in, a neighborhood she trusted. That's why we'd picked this hotel in the first place. To this day, we have no idea what happened, no idea who was out there, or what they wanted. But even now, all these years later, I still get a pit in my stomach just thinking about it. This happened about a year and a half ago, but I still feel anxious thinking about it. In the summer of 2023, my life was going great. I had finally found success with my online business, which let me travel while working and saving up for my dream: buying farmland. I started the year in Malta, then spent some time in Budapest visiting friends. It was an amazing experience, especially after spending so many winters in cold, gray Germany. By early summer, my next stop was Bulgaria to visit my friend Ben. He was studying medicine in Varna, a beach city in the east of the country. Varna was an interesting place. Some of the buildings were old and run down, but the city had its charm. The beach was nice, the people were friendly, and there were lots of cafes, parks, and clubs. I spent my days relaxing and my nights going out with Ben and his friends. It was a great summer, until one terrifying night. That evening, we had been out partying. We danced, drank, and had a great time. But after hours of being out, I felt exhausted. Since we had also gone to a day event before the party, I decided to head home around 4 a.m. Varna has a long beach, and next to it are huge parks that stretch for kilometers. My apartment was only a 10 to 15-minute walk from the clubs, and I had walked home many times before. People warned me about muggings and attacks, saying I should always walk with someone. But I never really listened. I just kept my music on and stayed alert. That night, a few others left at the same time. But after 5 minutes, we split ways, and I walked alone. As I entered a smaller park near my apartment, I saw a man sitting on a bench up ahead, looking at his phone. It wasn't unusual to see someone there at this hour, so I didn't think much of it. Then I noticed something. Behind him, hidden in the bushes, someone was moving. Before I could fully understand what was happening, the person rushed out, sprinting toward the man on the bench with both hands raised, holding a big rock. It all happened so fast. The man on the bench must have heard something because he looked up at the last second. The moment he saw the attacker, he screamed and ran, jumping over a row of bushes and disappearing across the street. I stopped walking, frozen in shock. My brain was still trying to catch up with what I had just seen. Then the attacker turned to face me. I felt a chill run through my whole body. He just stood there, gripping the rock, staring at me. Then he smiled, a wide, crazy smile, and he lifted the rock again. That's when I ran. I ran faster than I ever had in my life. My heart was pounding, my legs were burning, but I didn't stop. I glanced back. He was still chasing me. I turned a corner and spotted a kebab shop that was still open. Without thinking, I ran inside. The workers looked at me, shocked, as I tried to catch my breath. I couldn't even speak. And then he showed up. He slammed the rock against the shop's window over and over. Cracks spread across the glass. For a second, I thought he was going to break through. And then he ran away. I stood there shaking. I barely managed to explain what had happened. After a few minutes, I pulled myself together and walked home, avoiding the park completely. I barely slept that night. The next morning, my jaw hurt, and I later realized I had fractured a tooth from grinding it in my sleep. Later, I found out something even scarier. A year before this happened, in that same park, someone had been attacked and killed, hit with a rock, then stabbed multiple times. I still think about how lucky I was. If I had entered the park just a minute later, the man on the bench might not have noticed his attacker in time. And if I had hesitated even a second when the attacker turned on me, I don't know what would have happened. Some things are just out of your control, so if you're ever in a foreign city at 4 a.m., maybe take the long way home. Stay safe. So this happened about 11 years ago, when I was a senior in high school. It's the single most mind-boggling experience I've ever had, and I've never been able to fully explain it. A few things to note: it was mid-December in Iowa, and the winters here are brutal. When it gets cold, it's the kind of cold where, if you're stuck outside, you could literally freeze to death. On top of that, the snow makes everything eerily quiet. So quiet that you can hear everything inside the house, even the smallest sounds from just outside. One night, my best friend and I were hanging out in my family's walkout basement, having a boring winter evening playing video games. We were the only ones home because my mom had gone straight from work to a bar, to grab a drink with some coworkers. So we thought, why not break into the family wine stash and live a little? We had just cracked open the first bottle when I heard the door to the garage swing open and slam shut. My heart dropped. I immediately started looking for a place to hide the bottle. My friend looked up, confused, and said, "I thought you said your mom was going to be out all night." "She was," I said, panic starting to creep in. Then I heard heavy footsteps, and my mom's voice called out, "Meow Sanboo? Anybody home?" I yelled up the stairs, "Yup, just hanging out in the basement." A few more steps echoed as she moved from the garage toward the stairs. Then she called again, "Can you come help me with something?" I frantically searched for somewhere to hide the bottle. "Yup, give me just a minute," I shouted back. And then, silence. After about 20 seconds, I heard her voice again, but this time it sounded off. She asked, "Anyone down there with you?" Her tone had changed, more serious, more concerned. There was something unsettling in it, like the voice was hers, but not quite. It didn't sound right. That was the first red flag. My family was never strict about me having friends over. Our house was always open to family and friends. "So why would she ask that?" I replied, trying to shake off the unease. "Just Colton." After that, I finally found a place to stash the wine bottle and made my way up the stairs. But as I climbed, the sense of unease only deepened. The house was too quiet. It was as though the silence itself was pressing in on me, suffocating the air. When I reached the top of the stairs, I looked toward the garage door and the kitchen next to it. It was pitch black, no lights, no moonlight filtering through the windows. Just complete darkness. "Mom?" I called out, stepping toward the kitchen. "Where are you?" No response, just silence. My heart sank. I spun around, bolting back down the stairs, grabbing my coat on the way. "What's wrong?" Colton asked. "My mom's not home," I said, my voice tight with panic as I looked for my truck keys. "What do you mean?" "You were just talking to her," he said, clearly confused. "There's no one here. We need to leave, now." I turned toward the back door leading into the yard. Then I saw my dog, curled up and shaking on the couch. My cat was crouched behind it, ears flattened, growling in a low, guttural way. I couldn't leave them. Something told me that if we did, something terrible would happen. "Are we leaving?" Colton asked, still unsure. "No, I can't leave them. Something's wrong. I'm calling my mom." I pulled out my phone and dialed her number. She picked up immediately. "Meow Sanboo? What's going on?" she asked. "Mom, were you just home? I heard you yelling for me from upstairs, but when I went up, you weren't there," I said, my voice trembling. There was a long pause, then she said, "No, I'm just leaving the bar. I wasn't feeling well." "What do you mean you heard me?" I quickly told her everything that had happened. She told me to lock the doors, stay inside, and keep the lights off until she got home. Colton and I sat in the basement, waiting in a tense silence. The only sound was the occasional creak of the house settling. But every time it happened, I jumped. The animals didn't move from their spots. When my mom finally got home, she burst through the door, flipping on every light in the house. We did a full sweep, checking every room. Every door was still locked. Nothing had been touched, but she was visibly shaken. She never spoke about it again. But every now and then, she'd ask if I'd heard anything like that again. I never did. Now, years later, with my mom gone and me living far away, I don't think about it often. But when I go back to Iowa and see Colton, we talk about it. We still try to come up with an explanation, but we never can.